Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do, and then watched that false assumption destroy everything you thought was solid? That's precisely what happened to me. My wife thought I was cheating, but I wasn't. And because of that belief, she made a choice that broke me. She cheated. But what did I do next? Let's say it wasn't what anyone expected. But before we begin, be sure you subscribe. We're close to reaching 200 subscribers, and it's only possible with your support. Let's get started. I, 30 male, met my wife, 28 female, in college. My major was business economics. Hers was English. We met at a mutual friend's house, hit it off very well, and dated for a few years. I proposed to her shortly after we graduated, and she said yes immediately. That's the short version of our romance because there's nothing particularly outstanding in it. We have been married for 4 years now. I began to notice specific changes in my wife, Claudia, not her real name. Things began to change after we married, maybe around a year later. It all started when she walked in on me and a female colleague at a pub. It doesn't sound enjoyable, but it was a completely innocent circumstance. A group of coworkers went out for drinks after work, which is not unusual. As others left one by one, it was soon only myself and a coworker at the bar. Claudia walked in with her companions and approached us to say hello. I returned the greeting typically since I felt confident I was doing nothing wrong. But when Claudia arrived home after me, everything went wrong. She put down her purse and stomped towards me when she walked in. She pointed her finger at me and began yelling about how she caught me in the process of cheating on her. I tried to clarify that this was not the case, but she wouldn't let me say anything. When she finally calmed down, after calling me every awful term in the book, I described the scenario to her, even showing her images shot by the group earlier that night. I also mentioned that I didn't react abnormally when she arrived with her friends since I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, which I hoped would be obvious. After my explanation, she appeared to comprehend, stood for a few seconds as if she wanted to say something, and entered the room. This was a long time ago, but it still bothers me that she never apologized after all of that. However, I'm relaying the entire story since it was the point at which she became possessive and unnecessarily jealous. I could feel mood fluctuations if I just looked in the direction of another lady or answered a few questions for her, even if she was asking for directions. I also saw that these rules did not apply to ladies who did not pose a threat. AA's reasonable level of jealousy is beneficial since it helps establish boundaries, but it is pretty straightforward when it gets excessive. In her instance, it got excessive following that episode, which puzzled me because she had no reason to be concerned about me being with other women. Most of the time, I can tell when an interaction with a lady has soured her by observing a shift in her emotions. But she barely sometimes initiates a conversation, which is never respectful. She always gets emotional around the subject, and to say it drives me insane is an understatement since she will constantly mention the smallest detail as the reason she suspects me. For example, Mom once caught me and one of our apartment building's female neighbors talking in the hallway. We were talking about fundamental politics when Claudia stepped out of our apartment, saw us in the hallway, and returned. I knew what I was in for as soon as I saw that. I'll admit that I considered divorce because I realized I couldn't continue living that way. It was stressful. The only problem was that I felt it would be preferable for us to try couples therapy first, at least before I ended things with her. After all, I love her. So we tried it, and to be honest, it helped, at least temporarily. But things took a funny turn when Claudia felt the therapist was taking my side too much, and the therapist was the next person Claudia assumed was attempting to sleep with me. I recall laughing out loud the day she conveyed that opinion. It didn't improve the situation, but I couldn't avoid it. We eventually moved to a male therapist, and the sessions were able to last considerably longer, at least until the modifications appeared to be sticking in her skull. We had been without an incident for several months, so we seemed to be making progress. The last few months have been typical, just as before hyperjealousy became a thing. However, Rebecca's situation blew out. The same coworker who was in the bar with me years ago came to the house to deliver some paperwork, and since I wasn't there, because I was supposed to be working from home the following week, I believe my wife remembered her the first time. I'm unsure if she had a Winter Soldier moment or was simply because a woman came straight to the house asking for me. But when I returned home, all hell broke loose. She began howling at me the moment I went through the door, and I was met with paperwork thrown in my face. She questioned why Rebecca knew where I lived. Before I could respond, she said it was because I had brought her there to sleep with her. The genuine response was that I had told her where I lived when she asked to drop off the documents. It didn't help that Rebecca is a curvy lady, so it devolved into a rant about how I must like women who are a lot more endowed than she is and have been sleeping with them all around town. She also stated that she was planning to have herself tested for STDs since she was convinced that I had cheated on her several times. When she was finished ranting, I strolled into the home, grabbed a few necessities, and left. I had nothing to say to her, especially in that state. I also realized that no matter what I said, it would most likely go unheard since the voice of reason does not reach her when she is in that emotional state. I decided to leave the house altogether, so I did. I heard her shout behind me, "Enjoy Rebecca's bed." This has happened lately, and I've been sleeping in a hotel since then. The truth is, I'm determined to divorce her because I can't imagine spending several more decades of my life, best case scenario, dealing with a lady who believes I'm cheating on every other woman in the world. The trouble is that I know the therapy sessions helped to some extent, and I'm torn between trying to attend more sessions with her and giving up. I'm afraid that no matter how many therapy sessions we have together, it will just take one trigger for her to revert to being an overly jealous woman. I might not divorce her right away, but I've warmed up to the notion more than I ever have, and I believe that the next time this happens, I'll be done. This isn't a good way to live, and I'm tired of being under such tight control. I don't want to live with regrets, so that I will give her another chance, and if this happens again, I'll be done. I'm not optimistic, so I'm getting used to the prospect of being single again. It's what it is. The good news is that I didn't have to wait long to see she would never improve, and she chose to demonstrate this in the most blatant way possible. I thought there was an issue when we went to a friend's cookout, and I saw she was unusually touchy with someone there. We didn't know the guy, but when I questioned the host, a dear friend, he told me he was recently divorced and worked in construction. I was concerned because my wife was never this touchy with anyone except me, so it seemed unusual. This was roughly 2 weeks after the final experience I described in the previous piece. Anyway, I did my best to keep an eye on her during the BBQ and avoided making a disturbance, so I only told her about it when we got home. She didn't seem sorry, and I'll never forget when she remarked, "Well, now you know how it feels." Honestly, that part left me dumbfounded because it was effectively her confessing that she was purposely rubbing up on the guy to make me jealous. Honestly, it seemed ridiculous to me because there was no reasonable comparison. She becomes envious when other women talk to me. I never threw myself at them or became agitated. It was far from the same thing. She even asked, "Are you just jealous because he's handsome? Because he's more fit than you?" At that point, I walked out because I was becoming angry and wanted to punch something. She said nothing as I turned and went, and I knew right away that I was going to contact a divorce lawyer. I did not return to the residence until 3 days later. The odd thing is, even if I hadn't been convinced enough, she made the decision just a day later. I received a call from a friend who had hosted the BBQ. His name is Bill, and he appeared to be rather severe. He suggested that we meet, which I agreed to. When I approached him, he told me that his friend, the one my wife was chatting to and I had inquired about, had called him. According to him, the guy told him that he had hooked up with Claudia the day before, the day after I left the house, and he wanted to know what Bill thought of her because she stated that she was unmarried. I must have faded out since I can't remember what happened after that. So, by hooked up, it appeared that they had sex, and Claudia portrayed herself as single to this man. The worst part is that I might not have discovered this nonsense if the other guy hadn't come to confront Bill about it. My mind was racing at that point, and I had no idea what to think. I had no idea how to proceed at the moment. Bill could tell I wasn't paying attention, so he waited for me to return. He stated that he had informed the man that she was married, and he appeared genuinely surprised. She had no sign of marriage, and he told Bill, "Forget I asked, and I'll forget about her immediately." He finished telling me everything, and I immediately rushed home to confront her. I had not practiced anything, and I was prepared to let my pure rage guide me when I met her because, honestly, Was there anything rehearsed that could best describe how to deal with someone who was cheating on you? When I stepped back into the home, she wasn't in a good mood, but she was more conversational after something like that. She still had an apparent attitude, as seen by her first words, "Didn't expect to see you back already," which she uttered with a foolish grin. She was trying to rile me up, and it worked because the first thing I said after that was, "Shut up." I'd never been so abrupt before, so she seemed surprised. "You slept with the guy from the barbecue. Don't even think of denying it. You cheated on me, Claudia." She stood there for a few seconds before adding, almost whispering, "Now you know how it feels." I'm sure she recognized how foolish it sounded. I wasn't proud of it, but I threw one of our porcelain kitchen ornaments at her feet. That silly comment irritated me because I've never considered cheating on her. Her saying this as my vengeance and her get back seemed insane. I can't remember what I said after that, but I do recall swearing, screaming, and explaining. I remember telling her she was insane if she thought this made sense. I told her that she had never even come close to catching me cheating, that she was continuously overreacting to the minor interactions I'd had with women, and that she was crazy if she thought I had ever displayed the slightest signs of unfaithfulness. I pointed out to her right then that all of the things that have triggered her have always been women's bare acts toward me, not mine toward them. I informed her that, despite the tens of times she accused me of cheating, she had never had definite proof of any of them. It was all in her head, and that she needed help. That was where I expressed everything I wanted to scream at her, and after I finished, she said nothing. She just stood there. I inquired if she had anything to say, and she replied nothing. She only shook her head slightly. I advised her to pack a few items and depart. She waited there for a few moments before walking into the bedroom. She emerged about an hour later with her suitcase packed, and I haven't seen her since. I don't need any assistance this time around figuring out what to do next because I've already contacted a divorce lawyer, and I genuinely want to ensure that I have the upper hand in the divorce because I've put up with far too much over the years. I'm exhausted and annoyed that this is what it has come to. It didn't take long for the papers to be ready, and I ensured she was served at her office. She works for a publishing company, so I'm sure I've supplied some workplace gossip there. I know I did because she texted me that evening, enraged about how I had embarrassed her and how she knew I was being vindictive. Anyway, let's skip ahead to the period where the divorce processes were underway. I made a terrible mistake because I had no evidence that she cheated on me. I didn't have a recording of my chat with my friend Bill, nor did the affair partner confess to him. I tried to see if Bill could persuade the affair partner to admit it, but that was impractical. However, I was able to persuade them when I discussed her jealousy and the fact that we had gone to couples therapy and honestly repeated the entire scenario. She attempted to repeat the same story in a way that benefited her from the start, but it was easy to see through. Thankfully, I received a positive outcome. I got to keep the house, which was fair as I lived there before she moved in with me. Even though I earned more than she did, the judge decided there was no need to pay alimony because the amount was insufficient and she did not deserve it. We hadn't had any kids yet, which was terrific. I was relieved there was nothing binding me to her. I also got off the light because I agreed to let her keep numerous furniture and appliances in the house. I mostly did this because I didn't want to leave many of the things she had chosen behind. I didn't need daily reminders about her. So that's it. I'm free of her. And as much as it hurts to have spent so many years of my life being labeled a cheater and then being cheated on, I'm relieved to be in a situation where I know it won't happen again. That's all for today's video. If you appreciated or found the information helpful, please like it and leave your opinions in the comments section below. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to ensure you don't miss any updates. We've got plenty more stories, tips, and discussions, so stay tuned. Thank you for viewing, and see you in the next one. Take care.